Hi, I'm Bonnie Kempke. Welcome to my studio and welcome to Quilting on a Thread. This is the 5th episode in my journey series on the Color My World quilt pattern by Wendy Williams. And in this video, we're going to take the last two blocks that we've made, the Mariner's Star or the Mariner's Compass and the Inner Road, and we're going to join them. Now, joining circular items in a quilt pattern can be interesting, but it's not difficult if you take the time. And that's going to require a lot of pre-prep of the pieces before we actually take it to the sewing machine. I believe you can see this now. So I've laid the Mariner Star down, and the idea about connecting this is to make sure that the seams match up on the seams of the points of the stars. So at each point of the star, one of the seams should be matching up to it. Now that's going to be difficult to achieve without a few tools. Of course, I'll be using plenty of pins, and I like these flowered long arm straight pins because these things are sharp and they go into material very easily. But I'm loving the Quilters Select fabric glue stick, but the fabric glue stick is that big head of glue, and that's going to be hard to get just a little bit of glue on. So I have this SILI silicone, they call it a brush, but I just call it a little stick, and I will scoop a little bit of the glue out, and I'll be able to dab that glue into place. So you can use either the soft silicone side or the hard plastic side of these glue sticks, and it works really well. So let me show you what I'm going to do. So I lay my Mariner Star out, and I lay my roadway out, and I line, there's going to be a lot of playing around, so I line that piece up, and then I'm going to turn it over upside down and try to keep that seam lined up the whole time. And so that can be a little trying. That's where these pins come in handy. So I'll grab one of these pins and I'll go through the seam and then make sure that it's still lined up there. Now I'm just going to pin that there for the moment, and I'm going to come around and do 360 and get the other end, keeping the roadway as oriented as possible and making sure that I'm on the right bit of the pattern. So there should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bits of roadway, and that should then come here. Let's just make sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes. So now, so what I did is I counted the dashes. There should be 8 dashes on this side and 8 dashes on that side, which would give me the bottom of the roadway for this particular star's orientation. So I get that lined up. As much as possible. Grab me one of my pins. Put that in there. From here, I will pin all of the major compass or star points, and then I will pin every point and every seam on the roadway, making certain to align the seams in the roadway with the seams on the compass points. While this may seem to be a tedious task, it's really important to be sure that this seam that we're about to make, that goes all the way around the compass, the Mariner's Compass, to join the roadway, this is the best way to make sure that that seam is perfectly round. It can be useful after all these pins are in place if you examine the points and feel that there may be slippage. It can be useful to add a little bit of glue, and I'll be demonstrating that in a moment. And if you look at that, that looks pretty round. And we could actually just start stitching that right now. But if you feel like there's any chance that you're going to take something off seam, you want to go ahead and do a little bit of gluing. And so for all those major seams, I am definitely wanting to do a little gluing. So just a hair of that. Get it right above the point. Bring the point that you're going to seam over it. Make sure that it's right there in place. Finger press it a little bit. Bring your iron over and just press that down long enough to stick that glue. Now you're just going to proceed around the circle, gluing any of the seams that you feel might need the support of that glue, so that when you sew the circle seam of the road to the mariner's compass, nothing slips out of place. Now the reason some of these pieces scooch over a little bit is because that's seaming on the white stripes. It creates a bigger force than you might expect. There's force on the material to move based on the striping that we've sewn in. So we have gotten all the way around. So the next thing I'm going to do is take it over to the sewing machine. So I'll be right back. When pinning these pieces together, I positioned my pins so that they would be well clear of my needle's path. I generally sew a curved seam like this at a much slower pace than normal. You will need to use your fingers, a purple thing, or a stiletto to prevent any seam disturbances. Be sure to stop and reposition any areas as needed. When you get to the end of your seam, sew over the first few stitches to lock the entire seam. Look the seam over carefully to find any places you may have sewn a crease into your work. If you find any areas like that, rip that area out and correct it. All the way around, my mariner's compass points barely reach the road. Some may be closer than others, but they barely reach. So I'm going to go give this a press. So now that I have the road attached, I love how the points meet up as they're supposed to with the seams in the road. And that is pretty consistent all the way around. And a lot of that had to do with taking the time to pin, and where I felt it necessary, dab a little bit of glue. Honestly, for most curves, I don't do that much. But for something that's a perfectly spherical, perfectly round circle, yeah, I want to do that as much as necessary. So I hope some of the little tricks that I showed you in how I would do something this circular will help you in your journey, and I'd really like to see you again here on Quilting on a Thread. Bye-bye.